The moment the world thought it was watching a routine royal address, it was actually witnessing a public execution of a son by his own father, and nobody saw it coming until it was already too late. King Charles didn't hesitate. King Charles didn't soften the blow. King Charles didn't leave space for interpretation. In one brutal sequence, everything Prince Harry thought he still had titles, protection, financial backing, royal identity collapsed in real time. And the most unsettling part, it didn't feel emotional. It felt calculated, like a decision that had been waiting, building, preparing long before that microphone ever turned on. Because this didn't begin on that stage. No, this began years earlier. In moments the public dismissed, in interviews people debated, in statements that sounded shocking at the time but now feel like the first cracks in something much bigger. King Charles had been watching. Quietly, closely, and according to those closest to the palace, what King Charles wasn't seeing was change. What King Charles was seeing was a pattern of escalation, a pattern of blame, a pattern of public exposure that didn't just embarrass the monarchy, it threatened to destabilize it. Every interview Prince Harry gave didn't just speak to the public, it spoke against his own bloodline. Every accusation echoed globally, and the silence from the palace, that silence wasn't weakness, that silence was observation. Then came the book. Page after page, Prince Harry didn't just tell a story, Prince Harry dismantled one. Family conversations, private moments, emotional wounds, all exposed, all framed, all delivered to millions. And inside the palace, something shifted, because this was no longer frustration. This was no longer rebellion. This was something else, something deeper, something irreversible. King Charles wasn't reacting anymore. King Charles was calculating. And while one son was speaking louder than ever, the other was doing something far more dangerous. He was saying nothing at all. Prince William didn't defend himself publicly. Prince William didn't retaliate. Prince William didn't explain. Instead, Prince William showed up. While chaos surrounded the family, Prince William remained still, focused, controlled, and in that contrast, the entire narrative began to shift. One son appeared unstable, the other appeared unshakable, and King Charles noticed. Because this wasn't just about family anymore, this was about survival. The monarchy is not built on emotion, it's built on continuity, stability, control. And what happens when one member becomes unpredictable? What happens when private matters become public weapons? What happens when loyalty starts to look optional? You remove the risk, not slowly, not quietly, completely. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because what the public saw was a royal decision, what insiders whisper about is something else entirely. Allegations, questions, fragments of conversations that never made headlines but never disappeared either. And according to those circulating inside certain circles, those whispers may have been the final trigger, because you don't erase your own son from the system unless something breaks beyond repair. And suddenly, questions began stacking faster than answers. Questions about the children, questions about documents, questions about details that didn't align the way they should, and then even deeper questions about behavior, about judgment, about decisions that didn't just seem controversial but reckless. And King Charles was reportedly no longer asking if these things were true. King Charles was asking what happens if they are. Silence from the palace became louder than any denial. No statements, no clarifications, just distance. Strategic, deliberate distance. Because sometimes saying nothing protects more than saying everything. And sometimes the absence of denial becomes the loudest signal of all. And then there was the marriage, because behind the headlines, behind the appearances, behind the curated public image, something didn't add up. Reports began surfacing, not confirmed, but persistent. Tension, distance, different strategies. One reacting emotionally, the other thinking several moves ahead. And when pressure hits, those differences don't stay hidden. They explode. Two people, one crisis, completely different survival instincts. And King Charles, watching all of it unfold, wasn't just seeing a son in conflict. King Charles was seeing a liability, a risk not just to reputation, but to legacy. And when legacy is threatened, hesitation disappears. Because the decision that shocked the world may not have been made in that moment. Because once King Charles made that internal decision, everything that followed was execution, not emotion. And when January 2025 arrived, King Charles didn't leave room for interpretation, didn't offer gradual change, didn't test the waters. King Charles stood before millions and delivered something final. Titles removed, financial support terminated, security revoked. Prince Harry cut out of the operational core of the monarchy in a single sweep. And the language? Direct, cold, unmistakable. This wasn't discipline. This was separation, and the consequences didn't unfold slowly, they detonated instantly. Money stopped. Not reduced, not adjusted. Stopped. The Duchy income gone. Additional stipends gone. A multi-million-pound support structure erased in seconds. And what most people didn't immediately understand was that losing royal backing doesn't just remove income, it multiplies expenses. Security alone, once handled at the highest level, suddenly became a private burden costing even more. Access to properties disappeared. Business relationships began to crack under pressure. Deals that once relied on royal association started losing their value overnight, and the timing couldn't have been worse, because behind the scenes, financial pressure had already been building. Streaming deals weakening, revenue projections failing to meet expectations, public interest fluctuating, and when that royal safety net vanished, the numbers didn't just look different, they looked dangerous. A burn rate that once felt manageable suddenly looked like a countdown, and pressure like that doesn't stay contained. It spills, it spreads, it breaks things, especially inside a marriage already under strain. Reports, unverified but persistent, began painting a picture that didn't match the public image. Separate spaces, different reactions to stress, one pushing outward, one calculating inward. And when the announcement happened, the reaction wasn't unity, it was fracture. Because while Prince Harry faced the fallout head-on, Meghan Markle was reportedly already thinking ahead, already mapping survival, already considering what comes next. Two people facing the same collapse, but not standing in the same place. And when Prince Harry tried to reach out after the announcement, the response wasn't immediate reassurance. The response, according to what's being said, was distance, legal conversations, strategic positioning. Because once a situation becomes unstable enough, emotion becomes secondary to survival. And that's where the situation turned from crisis into something irreversible. Because when financial pressure meets emotional instability and public scrutiny amplifies every move, the idea of separation doesn't feel dramatic, it starts to feel inevitable. Conversations reportedly shifted toward terms, toward timelines, toward what happens if the partnership itself can't hold under the weight of everything collapsing around it. And in the middle of all of it, the children, not part of the decisions, not part of the conflict, but directly inside the consequences. Titles gone, status altered, future paths suddenly uncertain, and the psychological weight of a public family fracture at that level, that doesn't fade, that doesn't disappear. It stays, it shapes, it follows, while everything around Prince Harry seemed to unravel. Something else was happening at the same time, quietly, steadily, almost invisibly. Prince William wasn't reacting. Prince William wasn't engaging. Prince William wasn't escalating. Prince William stood beside King Charles and said almost nothing publicly. And that silence carried more weight than any interview ever could. Because in a moment defined by exposure and conflict, restraint became power. Loyalty became visibility. And the public noticed immediately. The contrast was no longer subtle. It was undeniable. One path led to isolation. The other led to stability. And the world responded accordingly. Public opinion shifted fast, and once it shifted, it didn't hesitate. Support narrowed, criticism expanded. Conversations turned from sympathy to accountability. And in a digital age where perception spreads instantly, the narrative hardened almost overnight. Prince Harry wasn't just losing institutional support. Prince Harry was losing public ground. And once that happens on a global scale, reversing it becomes nearly impossible. Because reputation, once fractured at that level, doesn't rebuild easily. Especially when every next move is watched, analyzed, questioned, and compared against a version of the past that no longer exists. And that's what makes this entire situation feel unfinished. Because even after the announcement, even after the fallout, even after the financial impact and the personal strain, nothing about this feels settled. It feels like the beginning of something else. Legal battles that could surface, financial realities that could tighten, personal decisions that could shift everything again.